It began with static, low, broken, barely audible. A ghost signal drifting near the edge of the Black Spine Nebula. Commander Jarek Voss heard it while running a routine patrol for the Vithari Collective. Most would have ignored it. Signals like that came and went. But Jarek wasn't like most. He was ambitious, the kind of man who read too many forgotten reports and believed the silence of the galaxy was hiding something. When he traced the signal, his crew got nervous, because according to every official chart, they were already at the edge of known space. Human space ended here. Beyond that, the map just stopped. Blank. Not even marked as dangerous. Just nothing. But Jarek didn't believe in nothing. He'd grown up hearing stories about the humans, the ones who rose from dirt, built cities in the stars, and then vanished after a string of brutal wars. His academy instructors brushed it off as ancient history. But the old veterans? They had that look in their eyes whenever humans came up. Tight jaws, lowered voices, fingers twitching like they were reaching for weapons long gone. No one wanted to say it aloud, but something had terrified the galaxy, and Jarek believed the truth was out there, just past the edge. So he crossed it. His second officer, Soren, sat stiff at the console. "Commander, the stellar chart isn't updating. There's nothing. Just a flat scan?" Jarek leaned forward. "Keep going. We're not lost yet." He should have turned around when the instruments started glitching. When the navigation AI looped the same coordinates. When the background radiation started fluctuating in impossible patterns. But curiosity was a drug, and Jarek was already high. Then they found the signal source. It wasn't debris. It wasn't an emergency beacon or derelict ship. It was a station, human design. Not rusted, not dead, alive, quiet and breathing. Its hull glowed faintly, like veins pulsing with slow blood. Jarek tried to hail it. No response. He launched a drone. It vanished. No explosion, no data. Just gone. Soren looked at him, worried. "This isn't right, Commander. We should leave." But Jarek was stubborn. Too many unanswered questions. Too much pride. He ordered a boarding team, 5 of his best soldiers in stealth pods. They entered through a service hatch, their vitals displayed on the bridge screen. For the first few minutes, it was quiet. Dark corridors. Dust. Then the screaming started. Short, violent. One voice shouting something incomprehensible before their feeds cut off entirely. The last sound caught in the system was a calm voice. Male. Human. "You crossed the line. You forgot. But we didn't." Jarek's heart hammered in his chest. He gave the order to fire. The cruiser powered up its forward torpedoes, targeting the station. But then something else moved. From the black behind them, a shape emerged. It hadn't warped in. It hadn't approached. It was just there, like they had finally noticed it. No known design, no registry, no heat signature. It was blacker than space, matte and silent. Before they could react, it struck. No weapons, no lasers, just a pulse, pure force, electromagnetic and ancient. The lights dimmed, systems failed. The crew froze as implants shorted. Even Jarek's own neural link sparked and sizzled in his skull. And then, the voice came back. Every screen, every speaker, even their minds. "We are the reason your maps end. You thought we died. You hoped we did." Visions followed, scenes not from memory, but history. Human ships slaughtering alien armadas, planets falling in flames, entire fleets begging for surrender and getting none. Jarek saw it all, things never taught at the Academy. Humanity hadn't disappeared. It had simply stepped back. Let the galaxy forget. And now, they remembered. "Who are you?" Jarek whispered, trembling. No answer, only movement. His cruiser's engines lit up. The ship turned, course overwritten by something far beyond their understanding. They weren't being destroyed. They were being taken. Silence settled on the bridge like a heavy fog. No one dared speak. Not after what they had just seen. Commander Jarek Voss stood frozen, his eyes locked on the view outside the observation deck. Stars shimmered in the distance, but the black vessel behind them drew all the light into itself. It wasn't moving, at least not in any way their sensors could track, but the cruiser was. Moving, that is, and not under their control. The engines roared to life on their own, propulsion fired without any commands, navigation spun unreadable coordinates, and their course bent like they were being towed, dragged deeper into whatever part of space they should have never entered. "Systems are locked," Soren said, his voice thin with disbelief. "Main drive, inertial dampeners, weapons, all offline. Every override attempt is being reversed instantly." "By who?" Jarek asked, though he already knew. Or maybe he didn't want to. He glanced at the rest of the crew. 30 elite officers, trained for war, exploration, even first contact. None of them looked prepared. Most had their eyes wide, knuckles white as they clutched their consoles. All trying not to panic. That voice, that thing that spoke through the ship, it hadn't just transmitted. It had entered. He still felt it lingering in his head, cold and patient. A presence watching from the back of his thoughts. Waiting. "I want full internal scans," Jarek said, fighting to keep his tone calm. "Everything. If this is some kind of mindware intrusion, I want it traced and purged." "Already tried," said Enna, the chief tech. Her fingers shook slightly as she typed across her holoscreen. "There's nothing in the system. It's like the ship is responding to something we can't see. Not a virus, not a hack. More like it knows what we're doing before we do it." Jarek's jaw tightened. He had brought them here. Beyond the line. Into forbidden space that wasn't marked forbidden, but only because the galaxy was too afraid to speak of it. And now they were paying for it. The cruiser curved through starless space for what felt like hours, until something massive came into view. It wasn't a planet, it wasn't a station, it was a structure, and yet it dwarfed every station Jarek had ever seen. From the outside, it looked like a dead moon wrapped in jagged steel. Towers and antennas rising like broken fingers, hull plating twisted into symbols he didn't recognize. The black ship behind them stopped. The cruiser came to a halt too, gently, as if parked by invisible hands. And then the docking clamps extended. Not theirs. Theirs. Jarek's bridge lights flickered as the hull groaned. Something was latching onto them. He felt the vibration run through the floor, through his boots, into his bones. "Commander," Soren said, his voice lower now, almost reverent. "This is ancient. Pre-Unity design. Maybe older." "How do you know?" Soren didn't look at him. "Because our sensors can't classify it. That hasn't happened in over 2 centuries. A sharp hiss echoed through the bridge. The docking bay opened. Not theirs. "Theirs," Jarek cursed under his breath. "Suit up. Security team with me. We're going in." Enna stepped forward. "With respect, Commander. You saw what happened to the last team." "I did," he said, voice hardening. "That's why I'm not sending another team. I'm going myself." The crew stared at him. No one argued. In 20 minutes, Jarek stood in the airlock with 5 soldiers, all in advanced Vithari combat suits, the kind that could take a plasma burst and still function. But he felt no comfort, because the thing waiting for them didn't care about armor. The bay opened, and they crossed the threshold into the human structure. It was cold. Not the kind of cold you felt on your skin, but the kind that sank straight into your thoughts. The corridor was dim, lit by occasional pulses of blue light running through the walls like veins. No signs, no welcome, no defense systems either. None they could see. "Keep scanning," Jarek said, advancing carefully. They walked in silence for 10 minutes. Then the hallway widened into a chamber. And that's when they saw it. A hall of memories, holograms flickering to life as they approached. Not images from their minds, but from Earth's past. War, fire, starships shaped like blades tearing through fleets that once dominated half the galaxy. Humans screaming, charging, surviving against enemies 10 times stronger. They had fought smarter, dirtier, and more ruthlessly than anyone. The galaxy hadn't defeated them. They had walked away. Jarek felt his mouth go dry. Why are they showing us this? "To remind us," came the voice again. It wasn't loud. It was inside their helmets, their heads, their very thoughts, and this time it had form. A figure stepped from the far end of the chamber. Human, male, tall, clad in black armor that shimmered like liquid. His face was exposed, pale, sharp, and unbothered by the low gravity. Eyes too calm, too ancient. Jarek raised his weapon instinctively. So did the others. The man didn't flinch. "You shouldn't be here," he said simply. "You weren't ready." "Who are you?" Jarek asked. His voice cracked a bit. The man didn't answer directly. He stepped forward slowly, letting the holograms flicker around him. Humans conquering, surviving, winning impossible wars. "We gave the galaxy a gift. We stepped away. Let you believe we were broken, gone, so you'd have a chance to become more than cowards and scavengers." "We came looking for knowledge," Jarek said, "not war." The man's smile was almost sad. That's what the last invader said, before his fleet melted. Behind him, the holograms shifted to a scene of a destroyed alien armada, ships shattered like toys. Jarek swallowed hard. "Why show us this if you're just going to kill us?" The man turned his gaze on him, and for a moment Jarek felt something break in his mind. Not pain, truth, cold and brutal. "Because I wanted to see," the man said, "if your kind still forget so easily." He paused, then added, "You do." Jarek steadied himself. "What happens now?" The man looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "You leave. But not the way you came." And everything went black. He woke up hours later, on his ship, back on the bridge, suit still intact. The rest of the team lay nearby, unconscious but unharmed. The cruiser floated in normal space. The station? Gone. No sign of the black ship. No data, not even a nav trail. Just one message blinking on the central console. "This time we let you live. Next time we remember differently." Jarek stared at it for a long time. Soren staggered over beside him, holding his head. Was it real? Jarek didn't answer. Instead, he stood and looked out at the stars. Familiar stars now. The galaxy they had always known. But it felt smaller now, and colder. He turned back to his crew. "Erase the logs," he said. "Every sensor record, every word Anna blinked." "Commander?" "You heard me." She hesitated, then nodded. "And set course back to Vithari Prime," Jarek added. "We report engine failure, nothing more." Soren looked confused. "But they'll want answers? What we found? Where we were?" "No," Jarek said sharply. "They don't, and we don't give them." Silence. Because now, they knew why the map stopped at human space, and why it always would. The days after their return to Vithari Prime were a blur of debriefs, silent halls, and eyes that asked too many questions. Commander Jarek Voss had rewritten the mission report himself, word for word, carefully crafting a tale of equipment malfunction, sensor disruption, and uncharted gravitational pockets that temporarily knocked them off course. He erased everything else. No mention of the signal, no mention of the station, no mention of the voice, and especially no mention of the man in black. His crew obeyed. Not because of loyalty, but because they were afraid. Everyone who had been on that cruiser during the mission had seen what waited beyond the line. They knew the price of curiosity. And though no one said it aloud, a silent vow had passed between them. Some things were better left forgotten. But forgetting wasn't easy. Jarek lay awake most nights in his private quarters, eyes fixed on the ceiling, mind drifting back to that moment. The silence of the corridor, the flicker of the holograms, the voice that sounded like a god remembering war. He hadn't told anyone about the last thing the man said to him. Not even Soren. It had happened after the others blacked out, just before the blackness swallowed him too. "You'll remember this," the man had whispered. "You'll be our warning." The words haunted him, because he didn't understand why. Why him? Why let them go? Why not erase them like they had the others? His answer came 3 weeks later. A priority summon hit his terminal. Vithari High Command. Encrypted. Immediate. Classified. He dressed in silence, straightened his uniform, and walked through the metallic corridors of the military hub with his usual composure. But his gut twisted with every step. He knew what this was about. It had taken longer than expected, but it was inevitable. You don't step beyond the line and come back unnoticed forever. The High Command chamber was a circular room ringed with tall windows and faintly humming panels. 3 figures sat in darkness on the central dais, admirals of the Corps. He knew them all by name, though only one had ever spoken to him directly. Admiral Varric, a ruthless strategist with a cold voice and colder heart. "Commander Voss," Varric said. "Sit." Jarek sat. "You filed a mission failure report citing navigational disturbance and system failure during a patrol of the Black Spine Nebula," the Admiral continued. "This was your official explanation for a 6-day disappearance and a complete memory gap in your ship's AI." "That's correct, Admiral," Jarek said. "We don't believe you." Jarek met his gaze, said nothing. Varric leaned forward. "Tell me, Commander, what really happened out there?" "I've told you. Don't insult our intelligence. We've seen the fragments." Jarek blinked. "Fragments?" Admiral Drella, the science advisor, flicked her fingers and brought up a holo display. Footage, grainy, distorted, but real. A flicker of the human station, a brief silhouette of the black ship, and worse, a frame of the man in black armor, blurry but visible, standing in the Hall of Memories. It had survived the purge somehow, buried in a secondary buffer or residual cache. "How long have you been hiding this?" Varric asked coldly. Jarek stayed silent. Drella turned to him. "Do you understand what you've done, Commander? You found a surviving human stronghold, possibly a war fleet. This could change the balance of galactic power." "You don't understand," Jarek said softly. "You think this is an opportunity, but it's not." Varric narrowed his eyes. "Explain." "They let us go," Jarek said. "Not because we're important, not because we're allies, because we're beneath them." Varric scoffed. "Nonsense. Their tech was old. Their architecture outdated. If they were a threat, we'd have detected them sooner. Their absence proves their weakness." Jarek stood slowly. "No," he said. "Their absence was intentional. You think humans disappeared? They didn't. They stepped back. They became something else, something you can't quantify." The admirals looked at each other, mildly amused. Varric leaned back. "So, what would you have us do? Ignore it? Let a potentially dangerous force sit beyond the line unchecked?" Jarek met his eyes. "Yes." That drew silence. "You don't poke that bear," Jarek added. "Not unless you're ready for your empire to burn." Varric's lip curled. "You're dismissed, Commander." Jarek nodded, turned, and walked out. But he knew. He'd failed. The admirals wouldn't listen. They never did. Later that night, a message pinged his private comms. Encrypted, untraceable. They're going anyway. No sender. Just those 4 words. Jarek stared at it for a long time. He didn't sleep. The next morning, he accessed restricted fleet logs. His clearance hadn't been revoked yet. A new mission had already been greenlit, a scouting fleet of 5 ships, including a battlecruiser. Destination: uncharted space beyond Sector H09. Objective: reconnaissance, contact, potential annexation. They were sending scouts to poke the bear. Jarek had 2 choices. Sit back and let history repeat itself, or break every oath he'd ever made and do something stupid. He chose stupid. 2 days later, he sat in a stolen transport, racing through the outer atmosphere with Soren at his side. "You know they'll hunt us for this," Soren muttered as he gripped the controls. "I'm counting on it," Jarek said. "You're betting everything on the idea that the humans won't just shoot us out of the sky again." Jarek glanced at him. "Number, I'm betting they'll listen to someone who's already seen them." Soren didn't reply. They crossed into the uncharted sector within hours. No escort, no weapons, no declaration. Just 2 men in a tiny ship, hoping a forgotten force from humanity's golden age remembered them. As they approached the region where the black ship had first appeared, Jarek spoke aloud. "We're not here to fight. We came to warn you. Others are coming." No response. He tried again. "They won't listen. They think you're weak. They don't know what you really are." Still nothing. Then the stars shifted. A ripple passed through space, like reality itself took a breath. And it appeared. The same black ship. Same silence. Soren froze. "They're here." Jarek stood and faced the view screen. "You knew I'd come back." The ship did not reply. Instead, a soft hum began to vibrate through their hull. Not damaging, not painful. Recognizing. Then the voice came again. "You returned." "Why?" Jarek breathed out. "Because they're sending more, and they won't stop. You let us live to be your warning. I'm here to be louder." A pause. "You could have stayed silent." "I tried. They wouldn't hear me." The ship was still. Then, from the depths of space, another voice, a new one, female, cold, calculated. "Then we'll make them hear us." Behind the black ship, 5 more emerged. Silent giants, cloaked until now. Human ships, old models, yes, but enhanced beyond understanding. Bristling with tech that glowed like starlight. Ready. Awake. Jarek's eyes widened. "You're mobilizing." "No," the original voice replied. "We're remembering." The human ships hovered in silence, vast shadows against the starlit void. Their presence was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that wrapped around your chest and squeezed until you couldn't breathe. Jarek Voss stood at the viewport of his stolen scout vessel, staring at them in awe. Each one looked like it had been grown, not built. Sleek black hulls pulsing with a dull inner glow, minimal in design, but radiating a kind of lethal confidence. They didn't need to flash power. They were power. The voice returned, calm as ever. "The Vithari fleet. How many?" Jarek didn't hesitate. 5 ships, 1 battlecruiser. They'll be armed to the teeth and arrogant enough to believe they can tame you." "They believe we forgot how to fight," the female voice said. "They believe you no longer exist," Jarek replied. A pause. Then the voice that had first spoken to him, the man from the memory hall, echoed once more. "Then we will remind them." The lead ship turned slowly. The others followed, gliding like predators through water. No war horns, no threats, just purpose. Soren looked at Jarek, visibly tense. "What have we done?" "What we had to," Jarek muttered, still watching the fleet disappear into the shadows of space. "We bought them time. Time to prepare for the thing they refused to believe in. Back on Vithari Prime, The High Command was celebrating. The 5-ship expedition had crossed into uncharted space with confidence, arrogance, and a full tactical sweep plan. Admiral Varric stood before the fleet board, speaking to a room of military elites with smooth detachment. "Our objective is simple," he said, gesturing at a large hollow map. "Confirm or deny any human presence beyond Sector H09. If hostile, neutralize. If primitive or fractured, secure and study." No one questioned him. They had seen the ghost data, the blurry footage recovered from Jarek Voss's cruiser. They believed it, sort of. But they believed more in their own superiority. The Vithari had crushed the Yulgan Empire, absorbed the Slentari swarm, subjugated 6 free systems in the last decade alone. They were military excellence perfected. Humans were a myth, a relic, and relics didn't win wars. The fleet arrived 2 days later. 5 ships, the Karnox, flagship, Valoran, Dexus, Hammer's Reach, and Skylance, dropped from FTL just past the coordinates from Jarek's falsified report. Their hulls gleamed like polished teeth, and their weapon systems crackled with readiness. For the first 4 hours, they scanned. Nothing. The 5th hour, they moved in, and on the 6th hour, the stars changed. Not slowly, not subtly, the way they did when a ship exited slipspace with a burst, but all at once, a full quadrant of stars winked out, covered. The black ships revealed themselves. No warp signature, no detectable engine trail, no warning. They were just there. 10 of them, not counting what was still cloaked. Aboard the Karnox, Admiral Varric leaned forward, studying the sensors. "Identify," he ordered. Drella's replacement, Tech Director Varn, scanned and rescanned, sweat beading on his temple. "They don't match anything in the registry. No emissions, no drive readouts, no weapon signature." Varric narrowed his eyes. "Then fire a warning shot." The Karnox fired. The beam struck the nearest human vessel directly, and vanished. No impact, no reflection, not even a heat bloom. The shot disappeared like it had been swallowed by space itself. "Again," Varric growled. They fired twice more. Same result. "Try torpedoes. Use the kinetic ones." The Skylance launched a spread, high-velocity metal slugs tipped with EMP destabilizers, a solid brute force tactic. The slugs reached the enemy line, and stopped, just stopped, floating mid-space, suspended like leaves in honey. Everyone on the bridge stared. Then the enemy replied. But they didn't fire. They spoke. Their voice crackled across every comm frequency, every screen, even the neural links of the crew. "You were warned. This space is not yours." Varric rose from his chair. "Who speaks?" "The Forgotten. You will identify yourselves or be treated as a hostile force under Vithari law." A long silence followed. Then one word. "Remember." And then the human fleet moved, not toward them, around them. The 10 ships spread out like ink in water, positioning themselves with surgical precision. Before any of the Vithari ships could respond, the enemy fleet was inside their defensive radius, impossible movements, faster than physics should allow. The Hammer's Reach tried to backpedal. It never got the chance. The black ship nearest to it shifted form slightly, its hull blooming like a petal. A single pulse followed. No explosion, no fire, just silence. The Hammer's Reach vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, not destroyed, erased. Varric jumped to his feet. "All ships, open fire!" The Vithari fleet unleashed everything. Lasers, plasma bolts, kinetic warheads, electromagnetic disruptors. The void lit up like a starfield in chaos. Nothing hit, not a single shot landed. The human ships moved like ghosts, like they were made of air. Even when targeted, they shifted trajectory milliseconds before impact. They were playing with them, and then they struck back. one by one. The Dexys lost control of its gravity core. Its interior collapsed inward, crushing the crew like dry leaves. The Skylance froze entirely, engines still running, systems fully powered, but no one aboard could move. The Valoran fired until its barrels overheated, but its shots began returning to its own hull, as if space itself turned traitor. Only the Karnoks remained fully operational. Inside, panic had set in. Officers screamed, commands overlapped. Varric stood amidst it all, fists clenched, staring out the viewport as the enemy ships circled. One ship drifted closer, the largest, and then it hailed them, not through standard comms, but through a direct mind link with Varric himself. He gasped, dropped to his knees. Inside his mind, he stood on a burning world, cities of alien make crumbling as human war machines marched over the rubble. The voice from earlier whispered in his ear, "You forgot who we are." Varric shivered. "You can't win this war." "War. Number, we ended war. We chose silence. You mistook it for peace." Varric trembled, tears forming in his eyes. "Go home," the voice said, "and carry this shame back to your kind. Next time we won't be merciful." And then it was over. The link broke. The Karnoks' systems returned. The other Vithari ships, crippled, scattered, or empty, floated around them like a broken parade. And the human fleet? Gone. Vanished without a trace. Back on Vithari Prime, a single message arrived through secure military channels. A short data burst sent from the Karnoks, encrypted by Admiral Varric himself. It read, "We were children, kicking at thunder. They let us live. Do not mistake that for weakness." And then Varric resigned. No explanation, no press conference, no interviews. He simply disappeared. The rest of the expedition crew was sworn to silence. The event, labeled a classified fleet exercise gone awry, was buried. But the Admiralty changed that day. Everyone felt it, especially Jarek Voss. He sat in a quiet room, watching the stars. They hadn't responded to his follow-up transmissions. The humans, they had said what they came to say, delivered their reminder. Now they were silent again. But this time, Jarek knew better. They were watching, waiting, and the galaxy would never be the same. It had been 2 months since the failed expedition into human space. 2 months since the Karnoks limped home, half her fleet scattered or annihilated, her officers broken by what they saw or what they couldn't explain. The Vithari government denied everything, of course. The official story was an experimental propulsion malfunction and classified contact with unknown atmospheric phenomena. But the truth had a way of bleeding through cracks. The rumors spread like wildfire in military circles. Ghost ships, black steel, the fleet that vanished. Soldiers whispered about Admiral Varric's resignation and how he hadn't been seen since. Even high-ranking strategists with clearance were shaken. Some said the humans had developed weapons so advanced they operated outside known physics. Others said they weren't human anymore at all. But Jarek Voss knew the truth. They were still human. They were just finished playing fair. He kept his head low after the incident. No interviews, no missions, just a quiet restationing to a remote listening post on a frozen moon called Byrith 9, one of the loneliest outposts in the Outer Veil. It was High Command's way of burying him, silently punishing him for being right, and for surviving. The station was small, cold, and quiet. Just 6 personnel and a rotating AI interface that barely functioned. Jarek didn't mind. Silence was better than hearing another arrogant officer dismiss his warnings. He took long walks outside the dome at night, wrapped in an insulated enviro suit, just watching the stars. Every time he looked up, he wondered if they were watching back. One night, the quiet ended. It began with static in the comms, low and erratic, not entirely unusual. Listening posts often picked up background radiation or distant alien chatter. But this was different. This was directed. Jarek froze in the control room, eyes locked on the waveform pulsing across the screen. It was cleaner than random signals. Purposeful. He enhanced the gain and focused on the source coordinates. The signal came from deep space, not far beyond the H09 boundary. Human space. His hands trembled slightly as he activated the decryption program. It wasn't encoded in any known alien language. It was binary. Simple human binary. And it said just 2 words. He lied. Jarek's heart skipped. He ran diagnostics, verified the source again, and confirmed the signature was similar to the beacon he had once encountered near the black spine. A voice from the void. Only now, it wasn't a warning. It was a message. But from who? He sent a return ping. Who lied? No reply came for 5 minutes. Then the message changed. He showed you what he wanted. You only saw a piece. Jarek's pulse quickened. He didn't know who he was. The man in black? The voice that reached into his mind? The being who had spared them? Or was someone else speaking now? He composed a careful response. Are you human? The reply came faster. Yes, but not like you. Not anymore. Jarek leaned back in his chair, staring at the words on screen. He thought he understood what that meant. Evolution. Advancement. But the implication now was different. This wasn't a warning. This was a fracture. He typed, "Why are you contacting me?" The response chilled him. "Because we never agreed with them. You need to see the whole truth." And then, the screen went black. The signal cut. The room returned to its usual silence, but the quiet now felt wrong. Weighted. Unsettling. That night, Jarek couldn't sleep. He kept thinking back to what he had seen in that hall of memories. The human war footage, the reminders of wrath, the mercy that felt more like a warning. But now he questioned it all. What if that wasn't history? What if it was propaganda? He rose from his cot in the middle of the night and began scanning through backup logs from the day of the original mission. Old data he had stored privately, buried deep beneath subroutines high command couldn't see. Most of it was scrambled, interference, corrupted feeds, missing time. But one clip stood out. 13 seconds of audio from the derelict station. He hadn't noticed it before. It hadn't been part of the core logs. The voice on the tape wasn't the same one that had spoken to him in the corridor. This one was younger, female, urgent. "They're not what they seem. Please, don't trust him. He's rewriting what happened. He's already altered." Then static. Then silence. Jarek stared at the waveform for a long time, then whispered, "There's a civil war." That's what this was. That's what it had to be. The humans hadn't just disappeared from the galaxy. They'd turned on each other. And at least one side still believed in vengeance, or worse, control. He needed to know more. 2 days later, Jarek did something reckless. He hijacked the station's long-range shuttle. It was old, slow, and barely combat-capable, but it had FTL and enough life support to reach the line again. He left a message behind for Soren. Just 5 words. "I need to know more." Then he jumped. This time there was no subtlety, no caution. He crossed into the dark part of the map without hiding his trail. He wasn't trying to sneak in. He wanted them to see him, and they did. An hour into unknown space, his ship jerked to a stop, FTL killed mid-burst by an external force, just like last time. The stars shifted, the void rippled, and a ship appeared. Not black, not sleek. This one was older, scratched hull, outdated frame. A vessel that looked abandoned, except it wasn't. Its engines glowed faint blue, and faint light bled through its windows. It drifted closer. A voice came over the channel. Young, familiar. "You're braver than most, or more foolish," Jarek answered, calm but wary. "You sent the signal?" "I did." "Why?" The voice hesitated. Then, "Because I saw what he did to your fleet. I didn't agree with it." "You spared us?" "No," she said. "He did. He wanted you broken and scared. But I want you aware." Jarek frowned. Aware of what? A pause. Then the screen in front of him activated on its own. Images played again. Human warfare, planetary invasions, alien surrenders. But this time new scenes appeared, ones he hadn't seen before. Human colonies? Burning. Not by alien hands, by human ships. Whole cities scorched, protests silenced, dissenters vanished. The narrative flipped. This wasn't humanity stepping away from the galaxy. This was one faction rising and the others vanishing, either into hiding or into the ground. He watched in silence. The voice explained. There was a schism. Some believed in power through fear. Others believed in remembrance through peace. The ones who wanted war, they won. Jarek clenched his fists. And now they're watching the galaxy from the shadows, deciding when to strike. Yes. And you? I escaped. Some of us did. We hide in the deeper systems, untraceable. Jarek leaned forward. Why me? Why show me this? Because you can't fight them with weapons, but you can fight them with the truth. The transmission ended, and Jarek was alone again. But not lost. He had what he came for, the truth. And he knew now the galaxy didn't need to fear humans. It needed to fear the wrong ones. Jarek Voss didn't return the way he came. Instead of retracing his path to the listening post on Bereth 9, he took the long route, cutting across the forgotten seams of uncharted space, far from known FTL lanes, and deeper than any sane Vithari captain had dared to go in a century. Not because he was lost, but because he was being watched. The woman's voice, her warning, echoed in his mind the whole time. They're rewriting what happened. He showed you what he wanted. You only saw a piece. What terrified him wasn't that she told the truth. It was how easily he had believed the lie. The powerful images, the perfect theater of vengeance, the controlled silence, all of it orchestrated to convince the galaxy of one thing. Humans had chosen to vanish. But in reality, one side had silenced the other. A civil war within a species that had once terrified the stars, and now lurked behind the boundaries of known space, fragmented but dangerous. One side wearing the mask of forgotten gods, the other reduced to whispers, exiles, traitors to their own kind for daring to question the rising power. Jarek had seen the tools of their manipulation firsthand. The mind link, the message halls, the precise, brutal erasure of the Vithari fleet, the illusion of mercy when it had only been a calculated performance. But now he had more than theory. He had proof, or enough of it. And someone needed to see it. Someone who could do something with it. Vithari Prime denied him re-entry. The moment his ship's transponder pinged military space, automated warnings bombarded him. Commander Jarek Voss, your credentials have been flagged. Your ship is not authorized for redocking. Turn back immediately or be considered a hostile. They were watching for him. Someone up the ladder had decided he wasn't just an inconvenience anymore. He was a threat. So he didn't go to them. He went to someone he trusted. He sent a coded message, a pulse wave buried in commercial traffic, bouncing off 5 minor colonies until it reached its target. Soren. 3 days later, they met in an abandoned supply depot on Ural 4, a decommissioned mining rock now used mostly by smugglers and deserters. Soren looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Gods, Jarek. he whispered as he stepped into the docking bay and hugged him hard. You shouldn't have come here. You're officially a traitor now. High Command's put out a quiet bounty. Half the military thinks you snapped. I didn't snap, Jarek said, breaking the hug. I woke up. Soren stepped back, eyes searching his. Did they reach you again? Yes, Jarek said. But not the same ones. A different ship, a different faction. They're not united, Soren. The humans. They're fractured. Soren frowned. Fractured how? Jarek turned and activated his portable holopad. The small sphere projected flickering images in the dark air between them. War footage, yes, but new war footage. Human ships targeting other human ships. Civilian colonies glassed by black armored fleets. Peaceful human settlements left burning in the wake of the same sleek, silent predators who had erased the Vithari task force. They're not just watching us, Jarek said. They're hunting each other. Soren's eyes widened. Jarek went on. The faction that met us, who spared us, wants the galaxy to see them as forgotten gods, untouchable, unbothered. They erased the truth, killed those who disagreed, and they've been rewriting history ever since. Soren exhaled slowly. Why? To buy time. To prepare for something. I don't know what yet. But if they come out of hiding under his banner, the man we met, then the galaxy will fold in days. You're saying he wants to rule? No, Jarek said. He wants to be remembered as a myth, and no one challenges a myth. Soren leaned against the cold wall, trying to absorb it. And the others? The woman? The one still hiding? They want the truth out, but they're outnumbered, outgunned, scattered. I think they're waiting for a chance, or a catalyst. You, Jarek shrugged. Maybe, or maybe they're just desperate. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Soren said something Jarek didn't expect. We have to leak it. Jarek looked at him sharply. To who? High Command will bury it. The media's state-controlled. Anyone with influence has a stake in the lie. Soren nodded. Not to the military, not to the council, to the people, to the colonies, the independents, the old veterans, the scientists, the explorers, the ones who still remember the stories. And how do you suggest we do that? Jarek asked. With what network? Soren pulled something from his coat. A worn, analog data core. Do you remember my cousin, Lyra? The hacker? The legend, Soren said with a grin. She runs a ShadowNet relay buried under the crust of Tenra 3. 1,000 mirrors, thousands of subscribers, leakers, rebels, historians. She can bury this footage inside a dozen civilian data streams. They won't be able to stop it without shutting down half the interstellar net. Jarek blinked. Will she believe it? She already does, Soren said. She's been tracking ghost pings for years. She thinks humans never left. She just needed someone who could prove it. Jarek looked back at the holopad. The images hovered in the air, ships burning, voices whispering, a truth buried beneath centuries of silence. Then let's light the fire. Uploading the footage wasn't easy. Even the data core tried to reject the files at first. Something about the format made it instinctively unreadable, as if the tech sensed the danger. But Lyra's filters cracked it. Frame by frame, the real story went into the net. Within 24 hours, whispers began to ripple across the underground comm lines. Veteran war forums lit up with debates. Encrypted history boards exploded with speculation. Disgraced ex-admirals and back-channel intelligence officers started comparing notes. Half-buried logs of similar encounters resurfaced. Ships that vanished near the edge, signals that were never explained, ghosts that suddenly made sense. And most of all, the black ships. They had been seen before. Not by many, and never for long. But enough. A pattern emerged, a timeline. The Black Fleet had never left. They'd just been watching, waiting, guiding the story. And now, for the first time, the narrative was cracking. The backlash from high command was swift and brutal. Firewalls surged. Arrest orders were issued. Lyra had to vanish underground. Civilian news feeds were purged. But the story was already out. Thousands of private terminals had cached the files. Pirate radio streams aired the leaked voice clips. Courier drones smuggled data cores from colony to colony. And suddenly, questions began appearing in the wrong places. In university lecture halls, in workers' unions, in the lower ranks of the military. What was beyond the line? Why did the map really stop? Who were the humans, really? And why had no one told them the truth? High above it all, from the shattered moon of Kirill, a man in black armor stood at the edge of a glassed cliff and watched the stars. His ship pulsed behind him, engines humming softly. A smaller ship approached from the void. The woman stepped out, her cloak tattered, her eyes fierce. "You saw the leak," she said. "I allowed it," he replied. "You allowed it?" Her voice was sharp. "You wanted them to know?" "I wanted them afraid. Truth wrapped in terror lasts longer." "You think fear will unify them?" He turned to her slowly. "Number but fear will keep them obedient." She didn't flinch. "They'll resist now. Let them." He turned back to the stars. "They'll remember soon enough why the map ends here." The galaxy stirred. Across dusty colonies and silver-ringed stations, mining hubs and backwater trade routes, whispers turned into conversations, conversations into arguments, arguments into anger. The footage had done more than spark curiosity. It had ripped open an old scar that no one had known was still bleeding. For centuries, humans were believed to be a closed chapter, a species that once roared and then disappeared. Their name evoked a mixture of awe and relief. Dangerous, yes, but gone. Now the question burned across every star system with access to the shadow net. What if they weren't gone? And more terrifying, what if they never were? In quiet meeting halls, low-ranking officers of the Vithari Navy whispered about resignation. A few had seen the data. A few more knew someone who didn't return from the expedition. The fear wasn't just that the footage was real. It was that the high command had known, or at least suspected. On civilian worlds, panic simmered under the surface. Religious cults sprung up overnight, worshipping the architects beyond the line. Merchants halted all trade routes near human space. Militias began arming themselves with makeshift weapons, preaching that the old gods had returned and judgment would follow. The Vithari leadership tried to tighten control. Bans, firewalls, threats. But fear, once seeded, didn't need a network. It traveled by mouth, by memory, by blood. And Commander Jarek Voss watched it all unfold from a hidden relay station orbiting a dead rock in the Colleen Fringe, one of a dozen safe points established by Soren's cousin, Lyra. The three of them had spent the last 2 weeks off-grid, monitoring how the footage spread. Lyra was relentless, hacking into network nodes, broadcasting in cycles, creating backdoors into systems she wasn't even supposed to know existed. Soren kept watch, rotating through encrypted frequencies and setting up emergency jumps in case they were tracked. Jarek didn't sleep much. He spent his hours cross-referencing the reactions: military, civilian, corporate, colonial. He tracked how deeply the truth had sunk. And quietly, he waited for something else. The other side to respond. The hidden humans, the ones who still wanted the truth out. They had gone dark after his last contact. He wasn't sure if it was out of caution or because they had been found. He didn't even know the woman's name. But he couldn't shake her voice. It came on the 16th day, a single word blinking in his private comms feed. "Ready?" That was it. No source signature, no coordinates, no time, just a word. Jarek stared at it for a long time. Then he typed back. Where? An hour later, another message arrived, a single set of spatial coordinates. He didn't ask for permission. He stood, grabbed his gear, and looked at Soren and Lyra. I have to go, he said. Alone. Soren frowned. That smells like a trap. I know, Jarek replied. But you're going anyway, Lyra said, arms crossed. I have to. He nodded once, and then he left. The location led to an asteroid field just outside the Miras sector, a twisted graveyard of shattered moons and dead mining rigs. It was far from any known route, dangerous to navigate, and filled with electromagnetic interference, the perfect place to hide. Or to die. Jarek's shuttle coasted carefully between broken rocks and magnetic drift. His sensors picked up nothing but noise. For a moment, he thought he'd been played. Then a beacon activated. Directly in front of him, a small, rusted ship uncloaked, its hull covered in patches, its engine leaking soft green energy. A voice came through his comm. Dock with airlock port 3. Come alone. He obeyed. When the airlock opened, he expected to be met by guards, weapons, tension. What he found instead was a child. She looked about 10, human, with tattered clothes and a scanner in one hand. Her expression was blank, her eyes far too mature for her age. You're Commander Voss? She asked flatly. He blinked. Yes. She nodded and turned. Come with me. She's waiting. Jarek followed the girl down rusted corridors, past makeshift sleeping quarters and hollowed-out rooms filled with scavenged tech. The ship felt like a floating orphanage crossed with a war bunker. He saw others, adults, teens, some cybernetically enhanced, others with injuries that told stories of long battles. These weren't warriors, these were survivors. And then he saw her. Standing near a cracked observation window, arms folded, eyes sharp and tired. The woman. Same voice. Same calm. But this time Jarek saw the scars on her face, the burn marks on her neck, the kind that never fully healed. You came, she said. You asked, he replied. She gestured to the view outside, the asteroid field turning slowly under starlight. This is one of our last safe spots. Every time we transmit, we risk being traced. The Black Fleet has been scouring the dead zones for us. The Black Fleet, Jarek echoed. That's what you call them? She nodded. The faction that erased your expedition, the one that wears the face of old Earth glory. You said they lied, Jarek said, about everything. They built a memory, she said, a weaponized story. They convinced themselves and the galaxy that they left to protect everyone. But the truth is uglier. She stepped closer. They were losing. Jarek's eyes widened. Losing to who? To us, she said. The rest of us. Humans who didn't want domination, who believed in diplomacy, in evolution without conquest. She sat on the bench and continued. After the last galactic war, humanity fractured. The Black Fleet wanted to wipe the slate clean. They believed the galaxy would never accept humans unless we returned as myths, as gods. So they killed the opposition, Jarek said quietly, and burned our history, she added. They created a culture of silence, a galaxy too afraid to look. They erased themselves so they could one day re-emerge untouchable. Jarek rubbed his face, thinking. And you've been fighting them ever since. We've been surviving them, she said. We're not many, not powerful, but we remember. And we want the galaxy to know what's coming. She looked him dead in the eye. And that's where you come in. Me. You were chosen, not just spared. Chosen. Because he thought you'd carry the message he wanted, fear. But instead, you carried ours. Truth. Jarek swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? She stood. Help us light the galaxy with what they fear most. Hope? She smiled faintly. Number proof. She handed him a data crystal. Everything. The original footage, the full story, the Black Fleet's atrocities, their plans, coordinates, ships, names. Jarek stared at it. It's all real, she nodded. But it won't stay real if you let them tell the story first. He held the crystal tightly. What happens when I share it? She turned back to the window. They'll come. As Jarek left the asteroid field, heading back into the light, the crystal secure in his ship's vault, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of truth, of war, of a reckoning the galaxy had long postponed. The line was no longer the boundary of mystery. It was the edge of a fuse, and Jarek Voss had just lit it. The data crystal pulsed faint blue where it lay embedded in Jarek Voss's ship console. It seemed to breathe, as if it knew what it held. Proof, memory, evidence that history had been written in reverse, washed clean and rewritten by the victors, then buried in the silence of space. Jarek sat alone, his fingers hovering over the control panel, staring out at the sea of stars ahead. Behind him, the asteroid field and the survivors faded into darkness, hidden again, running once more. And before him stretched the open void. Home was somewhere out there. But it didn't feel like home anymore, not with what he knew now, not with what he carried. The ship AI pinged softly. Vithari patrol detected on long-range scan, intercept vector possible in 14 minutes. Jarek didn't flinch. He expected it. As soon as he powered up the hyperwave relay, they'd see it. He tapped the console. Send it. Confirm destination? All of them. Clarify, all secure channels or... No, he said quietly. All public channels. A long pause. Then, confirmed. Broadcasting. The signal launched. The truth. Every file, every image, every voice, scattered across the galaxy like digital shrapnel, embedded in trade messages, bounced through relay nodes, hidden in code libraries, game software, entertainment broadcasts, and even medical drone updates. The story would be seen not just by leaders, but by farmers, students, soldiers, children. The truth was loose, and now nothing could stop it. 15 minutes later, the Vithari patrol cruiser hailed his ship. Unregistered vessel, you are ordered to disengage your broadcast and prepare for immediate boarding. Jarek opened the channel calmly. That won't be possible. A pause. You are in violation of Code 437. Dissemination of unauthorized data. Cut engines or we will disable your vessel. He stared at the flashing light on the console. His hand hovered over the response button. Then he smiled. Go ahead and try. They fired. The first plasma bolt ripped across his shields, shaking the ship violently. Sparks flew from the panel, and smoke hissed out from beneath the deck. But he wasn't trying to escape. He wasn't even trying to fight. He was stalling. The second blast severed his primary drive. The ship began to drift. But the transmission was already complete. The truth was out. On the colonies, chaos erupted. The footage swept through every network. It couldn't be contained. There were too many copies, too many uploads, too many voices repeating what they saw. Even people who didn't understand the military implications saw enough to understand the fear. The Black Fleet. The erased colonies. The betrayal. On trading moons, workers walked off shifts. Miners refused shipments. Tech guilds started boycotting Vithari contracts. In underground bunkers, old soldiers of the Union era met again for the first time in decades. Some trembling, some crying, all furious. In the capital itself, protests broke out on the lower levels of the core spire. Civilians gathered with holoscreens playing the footage on loop. Chants echoed upward. What else have they lied about? Where are the missing ships? Who ended the map? The High Command tried to respond. They spun their own version of the story, claimed it was enemy propaganda, a digital virus seeded by an unknown alien species. But they were too slow, and too late, because a new message had just arrived, broadcast directly into public feeds, not from Jarek, from the Black Fleet. The video opened with static, then darkness, then a single man stepped forward, tall, pale, clad in shimmering black armor. The same man Jarek had seen in the Hall of Memories. The same one who had spoken to him inside his mind. The one who had destroyed the Vithari fleet with no more effort than a breath. He stared into the camera, eyes unblinking, and then he spoke. "We told you why the map ended here." He paused, letting silence settle over billions. "But now you remember, and you must choose what to do with that memory." Images played behind him. Alien fleets burning, human ships advancing, then human cities, peaceful, filled with children and light. Then, burning again. His voice was quiet. "We stepped away to give you peace. We became myths so you could grow. But myths only remain peaceful when they are not challenged." His gaze hardened. "Your leaders have sent fleets. They have broken our silence. They have tried to provoke gods." He stepped closer. "We are not gods. We are consequences." The feed cut. Panic gripped the Vithari elite. Military fleets were mobilized. New fortifications began construction at the edge of known space. The map was redrawn, H09 relabeled as Restricted Zone Alpha. Civilian ships were banned from traveling within 5 sectors of the boundary, but the people didn't listen anymore. They weren't afraid of the Black Fleet. They were afraid of the silence from their own leaders, because that silence had been broken. And it sounded like Jarek Voss. Jarek survived. Barely. His ship had been crippled, his body pulled from the wreckage by a freelance scavenger crew sympathetic to the cause. They took him underground, off-grid, under the crust of an old terraforming station. He awoke to pain, light, and Lyra cursing. "You reckless bastard," she muttered, wrapping his ribs with synth fabric. "You were supposed to drop the truth, not get yourself turned into ash." He smiled through gritted teeth. "Did it work?" She snorted. "You lit the galaxy on fire." Soren stood nearby, arms folded, watching the news scroll across a battered screen. "You're famous now. Every planet with a dish and a brain knows your name. Even a few old admirals are quoting you." Jarek sat up, groaning. "Let them. They need someone to blame." "No," Soren said. "They need someone to lead." Jarek blinked. "Me? You're the only one they trust. The only one who saw both sides and lived." Jarek leaned back against the wall. He didn't feel like a leader. He felt like a man held together by medjool and rage. But Soren wasn't wrong. The galaxy was finally awake, and now it needed direction. A week later, in the orbit of a neutral moon, the first unofficial Council of Resistance met in secret. Representatives from scattered colonies, rogue fleets, old Earth-loyal AI cores, exiled human peacekeepers, even aliens who had once warred with humanity, all gathered around a fractured star map to discuss what came next. Jarek stood at the center, the data crystal in his hand. "The Black Fleet won't wait forever," he said. "They're watching how we respond. If we fall apart, they'll descend and finish what they started. If we panic, they'll tighten their myth. But if we prepare, maybe, just maybe, we change the outcome." "Can we fight them?" someone asked. Jarek didn't lie. "Number not in a straight war. Not yet." "Then what do we do?" "We do what they feared," he said. "We remember." From that moment on, resistance wasn't just about survival. It became a movement of memory. Old tech, once banned under Vithari law, Earth-designed combat AI, forbidden neural archives, decommissioned pulse weapons, was restored and reprogrammed. Hidden human enclaves began re-establishing communication. The shattered side of humanity, the one that had tried to choose peace, emerged again, not with fleets or fire, but with stories. They told the galaxy what really happened, what the Black Fleet erased. They shared the names of the cities that had burned, the families that vanished, the dissenters who had chosen truth over empire. And the galaxy, for the first time in generations, chose to listen. Not everyone joined. Some still believed in strength. Some feared the return of chaos. Some wanted to submit, but others, enough, rose up, not as an army, as a memory. Jarek Voss became their voice, their reminder, their flaw in the myth. And the Black Fleet, once content to watch from beyond the line, began to stir. Ships appeared near uncharted sectors. Small colonies vanished overnight. Shadow operatives disrupted resistance cells. But now they weren't doing it in secret. They were visible. And that visibility was their mistake. Because every time they struck, more people saw, and more people remembered. The war didn't come all at once. It started slowly, a skirmish here, a blockade there. But every battle ended the same way, with a whisper traveling through the void. We remember. 1 year later, Jarek Voss stood on the bridge of a new ship. Not a warship, not a cruiser, but a beacon platform, a transmitter. He looked out at the stars and activated the channel. To those who've forgotten, he said, let me remind you. We don't fear you. We don't worship you. We're not the children you left behind. He leaned forward. We're the consequence of your silence. And we remember everything. The signal launched. The stars pulsed. And somewhere beyond the edge, deep in the dark, the Black Fleet turned to listen. The map no longer stopped at human space. Now it burned. And the ones who forgot were finally paying the price.